It's the state of the dungeon. It's a video that Rob does about his games. Yeah! Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Rob here in the lair of OmnusI, and welcome to another State of the Dungeon address. This is the State of the Dungeon address for the game that took place on February 18th, 2021. The game was Ghostbusters, and everybody was sort of in attendance. That is, 2 players were playing remotely, which we accomplished fairly well. We had to do a little bit of jerry-rigging. One of the players was having some technical issues, so we managed to reroute it, work with a combination of text and funneling audio through another player, but we ended up doing pretty well, I think, for the most part. This was the final session of the Ghostbusters mini-campaign that we were running. When we had left off, the players had basically summoned the ghost of the manor house that they were hired to clean out by having Schmidt, their cool-handed talker, dress up in military garb reminiscent of the man who seduced the girls when they were alive and led to their downfall, they suspect. It's heavily implied, of course. And that did the work. It basically triggered a full haunting episode, and then the ghost made its appearance and came down. The position that everything took place in was that Schmidt was standing there with a wedding dress in his hands that was found in one of the trunks in the attic of their headquarters. He had a gem in his pocket, and he had a flower, a bluebell flower, that he had taken from on top of one of the graves of the girls that they had found earlier. Even outside of the right season, this thing continued to grow and regrow quickly. So he had one of these flowers in hand. And he had the red jewel in his pocket he'd also found in a trunk. Next to him was Ben, who was red. He came in with no gear. He was ready to pick up Schmidt and get him out of harm's way in a moment's notice. Ben is big and strong. He has got a good heart. He's just unfortunately not the brightest person in the room. The others of the group were around the two of them with proton packs ready, ghost traps ready, because they were expecting the ghost to come down. They were going to actually make a concerted effort against it. Now, Jimmy had missed the prior session. He was ill. We did not know that he had come down with COVID. He has weathered it quite well, thank goodness. Both he and his father have had it in that time, and fortunately they are much better now. They seemed quite themselves, so very glad to see that. And Jimmy had come back, and as kind of a nod to the fact that he would, I'm sure, would have loved to have been here. He just was feeling terrible and being conscientious about not showing up. I approve. I basically said that to write him off for the session prior, he had joined up with the assistant of Cassie Stone of the Ghost Badgers and went off to become tag team champions of Badgerland Pro Wrestling. So now he came back and he has the wrestling talent as well as the other one he already had for his muscle skill. So he picked up a new talent. That's good. I thought that was pretty nice. Which he got to use, which was fun. So this is basically how the ghost works. This is my own home brew, and this is the situation. They'd already faced this ghost before. But the ghost, when it's immaterial, can do all of these things, just does it through seemingly invisible agency. When the ghost is there, you can actually see it employ. Because of the 3 ghosts, it can do 3 actions. One is a physical action. It uses its tentacles to ensnare. If it's intangible, it will poltergeist affect things, basically, causing things to fall down or go flying across the room. But when it tentacles people, it can actually cause quite a bit of harm. The other thing is what is called its emotional wave. It can basically supercharge somebody's emotions to spur fear or anger. Those are the 2 things that it primarily does. So it can employ that every round usually on a single target, and that really jacks the difficulty up, gives it a 5 dice attack against their brains or their cool, depending on what it's trying to do to them. The final attack is a possession attack, and it can actually force somebody to do different things. So, this thing gets 3 attacks, but there's 6 Ghostbusters. So the Ghostbusters have a bit of an advantage, although the ghost is so strong, their basic attacks really couldn't hurt it at first. So the group started off by allowing Schmidt to do the thing that they had planned. He offered up the wedding dress to try to placate one of the ghosts who thought that they were going to marry Lieutenant Sharpton, the original rogue from back when they were alive, who thought she was going to run off with him. So him offering that sowed discord between the 3 sisters. And the effect was pretty quick. First of all, they immediately launched their attack. Tentacles started lashing out, and the emotion wave started smacking people. Jimmy came into the room then, carrying the championship belt as an extra piece of gear, and he showed up and immediately got hit with possession, which caused him to pick up the belt and smack Schmidt right upside the head with it, pro wrestling style, and Schmidt goes down. Now, Ben tried to help out as best as he could, but while he's big and strong, he's more built as a runner more so than a blocking back. So he wasn't able to interdict and protect Schmidt from that attack. But when it came down to trying to hit him, the ghost was having a really hard time. Ben is nimble, and my dice weren't going very well for the tentacles for the most part. The other girls took an eye on it, Maggie and Cassie, and knew that zapping it probably wasn't the best tactic. So Cassie went with an interesting sideline of trying to approach the ghost as a wedding planner, starting to talk about all of these different ideas and everything since there's going to be a wedding. The problem was she complicated that with a ghost on the ghost die and forgot that these girls were from, the late 1800s. So talking like a New York wedding planner, modern day, confused them more so than anything, and just got her a face full of tentacles on another exchange. Although she did manage to confuse her a little bit, and that increased, I allowed all of these different complications to increase the target numbers for the ghost. I was rolling quite a few dice. That ghost was very powerful, but as they increased the difficulties, there were some holes in the ghost's defenses that they were exploiting. Maggie, however, is a sharpshooter with the proton pack, and she did actually score some telling blows on the ghost while it was confused. Didn't do a great deal overall damage-wise, but it started causing the outer shell to slip, and also created some distraction so that they couldn't focus on Schmidt as much, which proved to be fairly useful. Of course, Billy was standing there as well, and while he had a proton pack, he thought that his primary goal was to record the entire event, so he had that old tape camcorder going on the whole thing and rolled really well to catch the whole thing. Admittedly, Billy sacrificed pretty much all of his participation on everything that he did because he made sure that everything stayed in line, and he made sure that he archived the entire thing very well, showed everybody in their best highlights, and as far as things go, sometimes you just need a person who sets everybody else up. Also, when Ben was ready he found out there's just really nothing more he could do, Billy's like, I've got a proton pack. Here, it's yours. It's all set up and ready to go. Ben slipped into it and immediately started helping to blast the ghost. So the ghost was basically trying to defend itself. It then lashed out with its possession ability. First of all, tried a Cassie, or a Maggie, or no, a Cassie, and it didn't work. Cassie slipped out. Then it got Schmidt himself. Now, Schmidt is great on the offensive with his personality and his patter. But when it comes down to resisting other people intruding on himself, that he didn't do so well on. And he got possessed well and truly. The middle ghost, Esmeralda, or no, not Beatrice, started making him say, I'm pretty. You're pretty. And it just started making him say nice things. Schmidt, through this whole thing, after he preferred the wedding dress, part of the genius of this, he then presented the flower, which is what flattered Beatrice. And then, while Esmeralda was raging, remember the three ghosts were Esmeralda, Beatrice, and Winifred. Winifred was the romantic, Beatrice thought she was the most beautiful, and Winifred wanted power and wealth. Or, not Winifred, Esmeralda wanted the power and wealth. So then he offered the flower, which caused more discord, and then he preferred the jewel and offered it to them, which completely threw the girls into disarray. They were starting to thrash around more wildly and erratically. That's when he got hit with the possession effect, because she wanted him to focus on her, which was interesting. That was the point when Schmidt realized there were more than three ghosts in the room. He felt an intruding presence and a male voice saying, you gotta stop him. You gotta stop him. Use your magic stuff and get rid of him. He was actually channeling the ghost of Lieutenant Sharpton, who himself had died in the entire incident under mysterious circumstances, and he had been tormented by these ghosts, constantly searching for them. His entire afterlife existence has been running in terror from these ghosts, trying to get revenge on him. So he saw these guys as his opportunity. So he was trying to spur on Schmidt as his proxy to try to stop these sisters from attacking him anymore. Of course, the folks were sympathetic towards poor Mr. Sharpton. Nope, he just got added to the target list. There's 4 ghosts we have to deal with. I thought that was great. They flipped like that. Nobody was all that sympathetic. Even though they had only gotten little bits of the story, they knew how this was going. So they were determined to make sure that Mr. Sharpton also got busted along with the rest of the girls. So at this point, Jimmy was free of the possession. Ben had been hobbled by the emotion blast. Poor Ben. He's a nice guy, but unfortunately he doesn't have a lot of resistance. So this raw emotion that was pummeling into his brain that he could resist with cold logic. I shouldn't be afraid at this point. I've got to protect my friends. He couldn't. He just... so few dice. Even using brownie points to try to resist, he exhausted himself fighting it, but he got driven out once, and then he kind of crept back, before finally the ghost was so distracted they couldn't use the emotion wave power anymore. He was able to get in and once again try to defend Schmidt, and realizing Schmidt was already... couldn't do anything with the possession issue, he went over and got the proton pack. Now Jimmy had realized that it's a ghost it needs dealing with, so he got a ghost trap and wheeled it underneath and hit the plunger around later, and the ghost weathered it. The ghost wasn't in any kind of punishing shape where it was going to get drawn into the ghost trap, but it was there and it was ready for when they got to that point, which was a really good idea. And it seems like Jimmy's player is going to be that player who does the outside of the box thinking and does things to support the rest of the group. Let's see if he expands on that role at some point in the near future, but I think it's a really nice element for the group right now. And a really important way of seeing how his character is developing in that kind of, I'm going to think outside of just, I'm going to attack it or something like that. Thinking about these are the things that are needed, I'm going to make sure these things get done. And that's consistently what he did, which was really good. Now, he also then turned around and he's like, you know, I gotta save Schmidt. He's being possessed because his ghost is forcing him to say that she's pretty. And the thing that really caused the ghost to snap at Cassie was when she started suggesting that she use some hair product, but the ghost doesn't have hair, which is what Beatrice is really cognizant about, is that their ghost form doesn't have hair. It's hideous. That's what basically drew the tentacles out to go after her. But after everything keeps going on, she gets discarded. She doesn't get captured very long and didn't get a chance to try to pull her arms off. So the group's psychological tactics were working really well against the ghost. Jimmy just kind of finally realized, I got to get Schmidt out of this. How can I do this? I had to make a parapsychology roll, which he doesn't have any training in. And he realized that in movies, the best way to do it is to pick somebody up by their shirt front and slap them heartily. Which he did. And it worked! Schmidt snapped out of the possession. Although he still was getting whisperings from Lieutenant Sharpton in his ear, which he didn't like. He really didn't like that. So, oh, so many fun things. Eventually, Jimmy gets locked down as well, and Schmidt gets his chance to pick him up and try to buffet him, but Jimmy's pro wrestling ability caused him to block it all heroically and everything, which was a little bit of a letdown for Sharpton. Now, or for Schmidt. Now, at this time, it's important to remember that several of the people in the group, even though they're kind of randomly drawn together, some of the people are actually really, could be very good at ghost busting. And Maggie's character is really slanted for the ghost busting. She's brilliant at occult, she rolls a lot of dice, and she's very brainy. She's also quite good at shooting her weapon. Those two things together turned out to be really clutch. First of all, she realized that the ghost was weakening. It needed prodding to break it up and to separate the girls. So she arced her proton beam across the thing's eyes, which it didn't like at all. But she rolled amazingly for her roll, so she had extra effect with that. And eventually, Ben's turning around and firing on it, and, well, Cassie tried. The ghost eye was cruel to her all night, it seems. She knocked off Ben's strike on it. But then the next follow-up shot caused the ghost to shatter, revealing the three girls inside, their ghosts. Now they were inside of the capture cone of this trap. Even though they weren't weakened enough to be captured by it, they didn't want to go in there. They weren't happy with the situation. Jimmy threw down another trap, so that there were now two traps in the area to make it easier for them to capture the ghosts, and the people with the proton packs turned those things on. Schmidt goes back to wheedling and cajoling, especially working on Winifred. At this point, he's now resorted to opening up his phone, which I allow because it's game-related, and he starts going with Shakespearean love sonnet quotes, which was great. I thought it was excellent. And I tried to draw it. I'm like, okay, go ahead and say it. If you say it, you're good. At various points, too, I like throwing out bonus points in a comedy game. It's like, here, I'll give you 3 brownie points if you do something. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes people are just a little too self-conscious for that, but I think it's fun to kind of try to get people to open up a little bit and throw out concrete rewards for people, especially if they can use them. So he was doing a very good job at continuing to keep the ghosts off kilter. The folks with the proton packs were continuing to zap them. Cassie, of course, is poking a little bit, but she's not particularly accurate, just enough to continue to weaken the ghost. Maggie is the first one to really wrench into a ghost and weaken it to the point where Beatrice slumps exhausted from fighting against the beam. Cassie is able to capture using the capture mode of the stream, and between her and I believe Ben came over and zapped it and helped draw her into the trap. Now, because there were still ghosts in the capture cone, the trap didn't automatically close. So they were still messing around with the other ghosts, and Jimmy throws a third trap that he got from Cassie, over there. Billy decides that, okay, I'm shooting them, but that trap that has a ghost in it should close. Don't want any chance for that ghost to get out or something to go wrong, so he goes over and he closes the trap. Beatrice is contained. The other two ghosts are still weakening, but they are still being attacked by the other Ghostbusters. So then Esmeralda starts to buckle. And they do repeated attacks, and generally people are doing a pretty good job. There are a couple of errors that go on. An errant blast does damage to one of the ghost trap activator cords, but it's still barely functional. Another ghost die, when shooting at that target, would have caused it to damage the trap, but it didn't. It's just going to need some repairs. And eventually they tag on, and they do end up trapping Esmeralda as well. Capture, boom! And because she was the only one in that particular cone, trap shuts automatically. 2 ghosts to go. Well, at this point, Schmidt really doubles down. He runs out of ideas for love and romance, though, and this is what I love about these games. They're so unpredictable. He just started spouting random non-love modern lyrics. Just for for fun, just to confuse her. And he rolled masterfully well. I think he rolled something in the high 20s. The ghost was confused enough, but now she realized the guy in front of her was not the guy that she had pinned her affections on. She saw through him and realized that the ghost of Lieutenant Sharpton was actually in him, which spurred her to beyond superhuman levels. She put all the rest of her effort, stopped fighting the ghost trap, and lunged, grabbed Lieutenant Sharpton's ghost out of Schmidt, and dragged him into the cone, and they both sank down into the trap together, which he wasn't thrilled with. But he was not a very powerful ghost. He was a pretty weak ghost as a very shallow person. His ghost was not a match for Winifred and her powerful passions. So she grabbed him, dragged him back, they went into the trap together. The heroes win. It was great. They had a hard-fought battle. It was well over an hour long, but eventually they won, which was everything that you want. They all did something cool. They all definitely made that encounter much better. Through mischance, through success, what have you, it was a great encounter. And I think everybody had a lot of fun. So then after that, it was time to wrap things up. The police were coming. If you remember, they broke into the police when they announced, or they broke into the place that had been boarded up as a police barricade because an assault had taken place. They were going to research what had happened to Cassie Stone, the face of the Ghost Badgers from the prior session, who was a big part of the haunting and confrontation the first time. So the police locked the place up. The group broke into it so they could actually bust the ghost. They knew the police were on their way because they called them about it. And they're like, well, we're still here. So the police were going to come. So they cleared out quickly. Billy made sure that everybody got all the stuff together, all the things that they had brought, the ghost traps, the packs, any stray gear, all went with them. I even gave them credit for going downstairs and getting that Geiger counter back that they'd left behind the first time. So they had everything. Got in and loaded into the van and took off. A few moments later, after their taillights are gone, the police shows up. But Billy was still there. Because Billy realized that he admitted he was going to be there. So he stuck around. The deputy sheriff showed up, talked to him. But Billy's like, hey, I came here, I have a job to do, but it's all locked up, what's going on? He had stayed and he had fixed everything so it didn't look like they had busted in. And the deputy didn't care all that much. So he rolled a very disinterested roll and didn't notice that evidences of forced breakage had happened. And he's like, well, you know, you're tactically trespassing, you're not doing any harm, but you should probably leave. And Billy's like, yeah, I should leave. And he's like, well, you know, I'm not stupid, you didn't walk here. He's like, yeah, my friends left when they heard that you were coming, but, you know, I stayed because I told you I was here. And the deputy's like, yeah, okay, well, you should leave. You're trespassing, so I'm not going to cite you or anything, but at that moment, somebody brought up, I think the player Billy, actually brought up the hammer I was about to drop. As Eugene Nettle and his smart car pull up behind the police officer. I love the foil character. Eugene comes out and he is ready to cause whatever harm he can to the Ghostbusters. Just like Gregory Peck, Eugene just cannot stand the idea of these Ghostbusters, and the almighty Department of Natural Resources will not stand for them doing harmful things to the environment, even if it's the supernatural environment. So he comes up and he demands that the deputy do everything under the sky to Billy for posing a threat to the natural order of things, or the supernatural order of things. And the deputy's like, he's not doing anything, buddy. And Eugene is just incensed. He knows that something's gone on. He knows that Billy is not innocent here. This is something, and Billy's like, you know, you're harassing me. You have no reason to be here. I'm not doing anything wrong, and you're coming here and trying to get me in trouble. That's certainly worse than me just standing here. And I'm leaving because, yeah, this deputy told me that this is trespassing, so I'm not going to stay here. But I'm going to file with my lawyers because you are clearly harassing me. That set Eugene off. Eugene got really angry at him, started just threatening everything under the sun, to the point where the deputy is like, yo, son, hold on. I'm not saying that this guy is an angel and he's not doing anything wrong. You can't threaten him because he's not harming the environment. He isn't breaking any laws except for this trespassing thing, and he's leaving, so back off. Eugene is incensed. He's incandescent with rage. So he goes back to his car, ready to just peel off in anger. I rolled just on a chance circumstance thing. He's only got a 2 moves. And he rolled a 1 and a 1 on the wild die, on the ghost die, and he smashed into the back of the policeman's car. Oops! The whole time, Billy is recording this surreptitiously on his smartphone. So now the deputy takes action. And Eugene just loses it. Completely loses it. He actually kicks the deputy in the shins and tries to run after he gets handcuffed. He gets hog-tied with ankle chains and dropped into the back of the police car. The group comes back and picks up Billy, and they get to kind of gawk. But Billy's like, "Don't worry, I've got something to show you." So when they get back to Ghostbuster headquarters, Fond du Lac edition, he shows them the video, hooks it up to the TV. They all have a good laugh at Eugene's downfall. Although, almost assuredly, if we play this again, they have themselves a true nemesis in Eugene Nettle. So then comes their opportunity to call Haas Zettler, their boss, and tell him that they've accomplished the job. Haas, of course, affable, a little bit dim-witted, but big business. And he's like, happy to see them, hear from them. Oh, you did your job, great. Kind of flirted with an offer for Maggie, who was a Spitfire with him on the phone. Apparently her player won't take crap from anybody in any game she plays in anymore. Or just keeps playing these obstinate girls that the moment something doesn't go their way, they immediately start getting angry and blowing up at people. He liked her fire. He offered her a job, but in general was pretty happy that the house is now free of ghosts, and also very happy that there's going to be documented evidence that he's going to get a copy of, because he can use that to kind of pitch the experience of the house. It increases the value all in all, and he gives them a $10,000 bonus for doing everything, cutting the property damage down to a minimum, just some scorched wallpaper, which he was going to have to replace anyhow. So they really didn't do a great deal of harm to the place and accomplished everything they were supposed to, including getting rid of the bonus hidden ghost they didn't even know about when they went in there the first time. So, yeah, they got their reward. So, happy endings. After it was done, I did go around, and this is something I like to do for storytelling type games. You will see this again in, say, if we do a World of Darkness. I love doing it for this. But I asked all of them, considering your character's goal, your one focus, be it fame, be it romance, be it wealth, be it soulless science, whatever, how did your character, given the circumstances you were presented with, how did you work to your goal? I'm happy to tell you, every single one of them found something in the play that matched up with their goal. It was probably a little easier because nobody was into the romance. Fair, although Cassie was there and there were options. Heck, they could have even tried to romance Eugene Nettle. That would have been hilarious. Hilarious! But every single one of them had something concrete that, with a little bit of thought, they realized, yeah, this actually served my character's goals. The ones who wanted money, Billy, he ended up making an extra tidy profit because he sacrificed everything contributing to the battle. by recording it and making sure that everything was documented and running the business of their Ghostbusters franchise, successfully interfacing with their employer and getting that bonus. Definitely got it. Schmidt pocketed the gem. It's kind of petty, but it's what he had. And he also was into it for the wealth. So, awesome. Jimmy was into it for the fame. And quite honestly, with all of the different things that he did, contributing and showing himself to be a competent Ghostbuster, he really did end up being able to say, yeah, I did actually get this. I did actually make something of myself with the opportunities that I was presented with. Plus his wrestling stint wasn't bad either. He did actually, in numerous cases, he was able to make a pretty good showing of things. Maggie, of course, learned a great deal about ghosts, and she spearheaded a lot of the research with her big brains that gave them the evidence that they needed to defeat the ghost. So in service of solar science, she certainly helped out with the body of knowledge for ghosts in the given area, and also what they needed to do to win. Knowledge overcame that challenge, and she demonstrated that, which was, I thought, excellent. As far as the fame goes, Cassie was able to demonstrate her skills as a psychic medium, and she's able to promote herself as somebody who's a legitimate talent, as she really is. And likewise for fame, even though Ben wanted to, of course, show off his ghost-busting skills, more people were far more interested in the fact that he was flirting with Cassie Stone, and she thought he's a pretty lovable lug. So, who knows, there might be something in that in the future at some point too. But, yes, I am pleased, very pleased to say that everybody, even given the limited scope of 2.5 sessions, in some cases even less, were able to do things that helped out their characters' goals, which is excellent. And all of them, I think, had a really good time with this. So, at least they told me they did. If they didn't, then that's on them. But it was fun, it was lighthearted, even when it was tense, it was still something everybody could laugh at. And I can't say enough. In a comedy game, that's very, very important. So it definitely is going to go down as one of my more memorable games that I've ever run. I had a lot of fun with it, and now I thank you for joining along with me on this ride as I've recounted all of these tales in these, my State of the Dungeon address. If you missed any of the prior ones, I urge you to go back and check, because every single time there was something funny, almost all the time. So, thank you much for joining me. Next game that we will be playing is Basic Dungeons and Dragons. Yes, OG style. For old school game, should be a lot of fun. The group will hopefully learn some new skills about running characters in a different style than what we've done before, but I think everybody should enjoy this. It'll be a good ride. Thank you very much. Until next time, farewell.